capital is the social relation that is necessary to stand in order for economic growth in our system to even take place. In order for GDPs to grow in our society and for the economy to run smoothly and investment to happen, we need to secure the fact that the majority of us is willing to sell, once more, one's labor power in return for a wage. The fact that we are willing to go to work in exchange for a wage. And this is, again, something that we are, in a way, forced to do without anyone forcing us physically, but it's the typical impersonal coercion that someone like Karl Marx described very well. This impersonal coercion is not, again, something that is going to be always present unless you protect it. So the mission of austerity is to protect capital as a social relation that governs our society. And it is, in fact, this social relation that allows for capital in the money form, all the commodities we see, to even be produced. And this social relation requires constant protection, in some moments more than others. And I think, historically speaking, now we are in a phase in which, even if economic experts try to hide and deny this truth, they are very well aware of how much the labor market is, in a way, going through a phase that is definitely a phase of crisis, in the sense that there is deep questioning of the very conditions people find themselves in. We saw the phenomenon of the Great Resignation that was very big in the United States. It's still happening right now, even if the economy is cooling and the unemployment rate is starting to go up. It is still the case that many people refuse to sell their labor power in return for a wage. And of course, this was triggered by, I think, many factors. Certainly also the fact that with the pandemic, there were some forms of social redistribution that were unusual for the American economy. This has helped problematize our condition that we usually take for granted as wage workers. So in this sense, I think today, of course, we cannot say that we were in the same revolutionary setting as the Red Biennium after the First World War, but certainly the inflationary pressures are triggering a breakdown of the dominant ideology by which the system is the most efficient we can have, and an eternal system. And people are realizing that capitalism is not the best and only possible world. And that's why austerity is fundamental, because we know that with interest rate hikes and at the same time by curbing social expenditures, you are cooling down the economy, using the terms economists like to use. And this will, in their terms, fix the labor market, in the sense that they will be able to produce conditions that will force people to accept lower wages and, of course, accept to go and work for a wage. And this is something that, once more, is not something that has to be politically enforced. And this is why austerity cannot just be reduced to bad economic theory that prescribes bad economic policy, which is somehow, I think, a very simplistic way of framing things that ultimately depoliticizes austerity. If you look at austerity just as a tool to manage the economy, which is a typical stance that most Keynesians take, then you cannot really understand why austerity is so persistent and present and structural to our societies. It's not merely madness, as it has often been described. There's method to the madness. And the method to the madness is the fact that we do need austerity in order to enforce a certain organization of society, which is a classist organization based on wage labor and exploitation, that otherwise people would be not so content to accept.